They have every reason to lie. They have every motivation to lie. They are inconsistent. They tell different stories every time they talk about the things they talk about. The state knows they're horrible witnesses. But here's what happens. In closing, the state says, they're not our witnesses. We didn't choose those witnesses. They're Shannon Stillwell's friends. He chose those witnesses. That's their line. They might not use it now because I already said it. So let's talk about Donovan Thomas and some of the evidence in this case. Eyewitnesses. Who did we hear from? We heard from Reginald Hendricks. He was a gentleman that was shot. He was standing near Donovan Thomas. He didn't
he definitely said he did it. We know. Yeah.
We heard from two witnesses, two people that were in the barber shop, working in the barber shop. They heard shots. They ducked. They described what happened afterwards. No one identified anyone out of those two witnesses. We heard from a man named Sammy Davis, an older gentleman who lived across the street, who knew Donovan Thomas. They called him Car Wash. He washed Donovan Thomas's car. He didn't see anyone in the car. That was his testimony. And then we didn't hear from, but we heard about someone named Spencer Wright. Well, actually, we heard about someone named Nicholas Robinson.
Under oath.
What did we hear about Nicholas Robinson? And Investigator Thorpe talked about it, and definitely District Attorney Sprinkle talked about this as well. What did we hear about Nicholas Robinson?
Oh, not Mr. Sprinkle.
We heard about Nicholas Robinson September of 2015. He was being arrested for felony theft and a probation matter. And when he's being arrested, and when I say he's being arrested by the Atlanta Police Department, by an officer, and he's hours away from having, you know what I like to talk about, the Fulton County Blues. He's hours away from having that blue jumpsuit on, right? And what did we learn that Nicholas Robinson did? He said, "Whoa, you guys arrested me. I want to go talk to a detective about a case." So they take him to Thorpe. He wanted to talk to him about the Donovan Thomas homicide. They take him to Thorpe, and Thorpe starts to interview him. Okay? And Nicholas Robinson claims he's at the scene and starts talking to Investigator Thorpe about what he saw. And that would be hearsay to talk about because he didn't testify. But we also heard that in the middle of that interview, Lieutenant Gaither was there. And she's doing research into the background of this Nicholas Robinson. And what does Lieutenant Gaither realize? Wait a second. This man who's saying his name is Nicholas Robinson, this man is telling Detective Thorpe his name is Nicholas Robinson, his name is actually Spencer Wright. So she goes and tells Thorpe. And what does Thorpe do?
Squirrel brain.
He's interviewing someone in this high-profile case, and this person has just lied to him about his name. What does Thorpe do? He continues to interview him. And in the very next day, he goes out and takes warrants on 4 people, including my client. Then we hear about DA Sprinkle taking over this case in the investigation in early 2016. And him seeing this mention of this Nicholas Robinson, who was really Spencer Wright, and where he said he was when he witnessed events.
Does it sound too low?
And we hear about DA Sprinkle getting the surveillance.
I got you.
And checking into it. And talking to Spencer Wright. Where did you say you were? On what bench? Where? Circle it on his picture. And about how he went to look at the surveillance himself. And what did he see?
He saw a cat.
An empty bench.
Don't forget the cat.
Spencer Wright not only lied about his name, but he lied about a lot more. But know who he duped? Detective Thorpe. We're going to get back to Spencer Wright in a minute. We have no ballistics from the Donovan Thomas case, no DNA or fingerprints
None.
We have an infinity car, which we will talk about in a minute as well. But essentially, this case, this Donovan Thomas case, comes down to two witnesses. And in my opening, I warned you all about people wearing the Fulton County blues. That was the theme of my opening. Because as it's played out, it turns out Rice Street is a disgusting, horrible place. Being locked up anywhere is awful. And there are people who will lie on other people to stay out of Rice Street.
Guess who he's
You
talking
don't
about?
believe me? Spencer Wright, Nicholas Robinson.
Kenneth Copeland.
He's the proof of concept right there.
Don't forget
Getting
Lil
locked
Woody.
up, wants to talk to the detective, and then completely makes things up. And the next day, warrants are being signed.
Which
This
is
is not
insane.
some theory that I have that people lie to get themselves out of trouble. It's proven. Spencer Wright did it. He's not the only one who did it. So the state has these two witnesses, Quindarius Zachary and Kenneth Copeland. Those are the two witnesses.
Yep, here we go.
And I've been doing this long enough. They're horrible witnesses. They're liars.
Dang.
They have every reason to lie. They have every motivation to lie. They are inconsistent. They tell different stories every time they talk about the things they talk about. The state knows they're horrible witnesses. But here's what happens. In closing, the state says, they're not our witnesses. We didn't choose those witnesses. They're Shannon Stillwell's friends. He chose those witnesses. That's their line. They might not use it now because I already said it. But that's their line. But let's think about that
Come
for a
on,
second.
Max. I love it.
That's not their witnesses. First of all, they're the ones that called them to the stand. But that's not their witnesses. Look at this indictment. 28 names. Quindarius Zachary? See on this indictment? No. Kenneth Copeland? Is he on this indictment? No. Are any of us going to really sit here and pretend that if the state was really being honest about who to charge about the events in 2015, 2014, 2015, that Kenneth Copeland wouldn't be on that indictment? Kenneth Copeland was a one-man crime wave in 2014, 2015.
Uh-oh.
Yet, he's not on this indictment. Quindarius Zachary was a straw purchaser for guns. Quindarius Zachary was right in the middle, the impetus for one of the overacts, the April 28th, 2015 shooting of houses. He's right in the middle of this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not on the indictment? And we're supposed to pretend that the state aren't the ones that chose Kenneth Copeland and Quindarius Zachary as their witnesses? Of course they did. Of course they did.
Look at the cameraman doing some great work.
And why did they choose them? What are the qualifications that Kenneth
Dripping in
Copeland
blood.
and Quindarius Zachary both had when it really comes down to it? They're two people that are willing to lie on others to get themselves out of trouble. That was one qualification that they had. And two, they are two people that happened to put themselves in situations, serious situations, that would require them to lie on others to get themselves out of trouble. Mm-hmm. Those were their two qualifications. And the state said, sounds good. We'll sign you up. You're our witnesses. You're no longer on this indictment.
It's nasty work.
Let's talk about Kenneth Copeland's credibility. So use the same tests you do for those quote-unquote expert witnesses. What's his bias, his motive? How's he come across on the stand? What are his motivations? Well, we know he really hates jail. That was clear. I submit to you that it seems that not only does he hate jail, but he almost has a mental disorder about, he literally said, I'd rather die than go to Rice Street. That's extreme. He's told us, I would do anything to stay out of jail. I would lie on anyone to get myself out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
He has his own term for what he does, the finesse. He really hates jail. What else do we know about Kenneth Copeland? Well, we know about, I'm going to ask y'all to think back and remember this when he was on the stand, a case, 21 CP 197618, State of Georgia versus Kenneth Copeland. Remember that? When he was actually in jail and he picked up another charge because he claimed that a jail worker attacked him and sprayed him with OC spray for no good cause. And he brought charges, or tried to bring charges, against this poor jail worker.
Mm-hmm.
What do we know?
That was a lie.
The surveillance from the jail was pulled. The investigators looked at it, as they should. Even Kenneth Copeland, a known liar, when he makes allegations against the police, yes, it should be looked
That's
into.
good, man.
And it was.
That's good.
And what did they find? No OC spray was emitted. In fact, the officer that was accused didn't even have OC spray on them at the time. So what happened to Kenneth Copeland in that case? Well, he was charged with false statement and false report of a crime. 2 felonies, excuse me.
Look at Miss Love.
Right, and so what we have ultimately is that there is no evidence.
So as a result of his lie, he gets charged with these 2 felonies. False statement and false report of a crime. And it's pending, and it's pending, and it's pending. Then all of a sudden, as this case is ramping up, and Mr. Copeland's going to have to take the stand and be asked about his pending charges and his prior lies, all of a sudden, on January 18th, 2024, Fonnie Willis and her employee, Kenneth Hutcherson, quietly dismissed the case against Kenneth Copeland. The case of false statement, a case of false report of a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they do it, according to that sheet? Was it, oh, we actually looked at the video again and it actually supported Kenneth Copeland? No. Was it the victim didn't want to prosecute? No. Prosecutorial discretion. They decided it was in their best interest to dismiss that case against Kenneth Copeland before he testified. What? Remember I told Kenneth Copeland
Nasty.
about it?
Yeah.
Thought he was going to get up and hug me. He said, my case is dismissed? Yep, sure was. State took care of you. You're not on this indictment either. Kenneth Copeland's a liar. He's a proven liar.